Hey, it's time for TV Skywriter. Hey, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to TV Skywriter. I'm on slightly early today to accommodate my guest schedule. No problem. I'm Pat Murray. I post the Durham Skywriter. I like to introduce you to people that I think you should know from around the world. But today's guest is a fellow Durhamite. Kenny Dalsheimer is a well-known and really super excellent documentary filmmaker. Welcome to the show, Kenny.
Thank you, Pat. Thanks for having me on Durham Skywriter.
Absolutely. We've known each other for years, and in fact, I think the documentary that you were working on when I first met you was the one with the young man who was finding his voice.
Yes, a new kind of listening.
Right, that was really beautiful.
Yeah, that was a while ago now, but that was an amazing project, and folks can check that film out. It's an advocacy film about arts and disabilities and civil and human rights, a new kind of listening.com.
Beautiful. Thank you, Kenny, for that.
Yeah.
Now, I want to talk about your latest project. Let's mention it, and then I want to ask you some questions about how you became a documentary filmmaker. But tell us about your latest project. It's not done yet. It's your current project, right?
Yeah, it's a work in progress. It's a film about revered old-time bluegrass musician Alice Gerrard. The title of the film is You Gave Me a Song, subtitle, The Life and Music of Alice Gerrard. And I've been working on it for a little over 2 years. And it's just been an amazing, fun project from the beginning. And it is in the latter stages of production, hoping to wrap up interviews this year, early next year, and begin editing next year. Not sure exactly when it will be completed, but we're hoping end of next year. So
nice.
Yeah.
So how did you come about making this documentary? Where did the idea come from? Did you find her? Did you just like see her on TV or on the news or something and say, I've got to do a story on her?
So like a lot of my projects, film and other kinds of projects, I learn about them often through friends and just social interactions and serendipity. I was at a birthday party, a friend's birthday party. There were some old-time musicians playing live at the party. Just we were hanging out in the kitchen with beers and beverages, and the conversation turned to the work I'm doing. I was just finishing a film about a Kenyan peace organization, and kind of looking for a new project, and the musicians began to talk about Alice Gerrard, who Alice lives in Durham, not far from where I live, and they just shared how amazing she is, how important she has been to old time and bluegrass music, and I had never heard of Alice before that party. So that conversation led me to think about how I can learn more. So I did some Googling, and I sent an email to a Southern historian at UNC, Chapel Hill, Bill Ferris, with a question, is this a good idea for a film about Alice Gerrard? Bill forwarded the email to several other folks, and all of them said, this is a worthy project. So after that affirmation and the kind of the thumbs up from a number of people I really admire and respect, I reached out to Alice, and we met at a coffee shop. Alice thought about it, and then we had another meeting, and she said, this should be fun, and it has been. And I've grown to just love Alice's music, and we've become friends, and so it's just been a joy and great fun for me, and a great learning experience, because I'm learning a lot about a world of music I knew nothing about. So it's been great.
Now, I shouldn't assume, but I know she's in her 80s, and I'm guessing with her being a musician that she has like an outgoing personality. Am I right?
I would say that Alice is warm, friendly, funny. She is, I believe she's 83, still very active as a musician, as a writer of new songs, as an educator. And she's also been spending some time working on a book project over the past couple of years on and off. So my mom is the same age, and it's kind of amazing. Alice is quite a bit more active, and I think her creativity and just her connectivity to so many great musicians has just kept her going and rolling, and it's been amazing to watch. And I sometimes get a little tired following her around, but it's been great. So yeah, so the film, part of the film story is sharing how an artist in her 80s continues to create and be engaged and celebrate the tradition, the music that she loves so much and has done so much for over the years. And then there are other characters, other people who are weaving in and out of the film as well. But yeah.
See, one reason I was asking that, I love documentaries, by the way.
Yeah,
and I always wondered when I watched them, like, what would it have been like if you tried to make a documentary about a person who was a wallflower and had a real quiet, almost reluctant type persona? Is that possible?
Yeah. So I think I've worked on films where the main character is not so outgoing, and it's a different kind of storytelling when you have that. I worked on a film with a friend and filmmaker, Penelope Mounsell, about George Roos and a project he did in Durham. And George he's Parisian French, and he doesn't speak great English. And while he's quiet, he also has a great sense of humor. But that film did not get as deeply into his life, and did not spend quite as much time with him and his storytelling. It was more about his art and the project. And there have been other films. When I was in Kenya, there were characters who were not as comfortable on camera, and that just happens. And I figure out a way to work with folks who may not be as comfortable, and hopefully still allow their story to kind of come out, or their character to come out in the film. So
that's good to hear, because I thought maybe you just have to give up and find somebody else. So I guess you have to have real skill to work around that.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you have a project idea and you meet, if it's a bio doc about a person, and you meet them and you find out they're very shy or reluctant to speak, well, then yeah, you may need to either spend more time with the person you want to tell the story about, or switch things up and change your approach to how you want to maybe tell their story. But it's not uncommon, and oftentimes filmmakers will interview a number of people and select the best interviews from the bunch. So that's not an uncommon thing to do on a bigger project, especially.
Now, I'm wondering, what was it? Now, a lot of us grow up watching cartoons and dramas and sitcoms, and then the occasional documentary, which can really be exciting, be it a documentary about penguins or whatever. What documentary or what was it that made you realize this is something that you've got to try for yourself? And were you just a kid, or were you a teenager, or what?
Yeah, so the story I tell, it'll probably change as my brain ages, but I first got into filmmaking in middle school. I got I believe my grandparents gave me a Super 8 film camera. And there were 2 or 3 years where I made short, silly projects, working with Super 8 film cameras, little 3.5-minute reels, and we would do little silly skits, or try to do some special effects, make someone like look miniature when you hold the hand up and they're in the background, things like that. And I made a couple of I did a couple of shorts with Campbell's soup cans. The title screens that I wrote have misspellings throughout. I'm not a great speller. So there's some great archival stuff of those early films, but it wasn't documentary. It was just the interest, excitement of working with a camera and composing in the frame and that kind of thing. And then in my college graduate days, I studied anthropology, and I was interested in visual anthropology a little bit, and ethnographic filmmaking a little bit. Not a whole lot, but I think that my interest in studying, other ways of being in the world, began to overlap a little bit with my interest in visual storytelling. And then I taught middle school social studies, and it was then that I began to actually watch more documentary films and use them as a teacher in classes. I had the Civil War series and the baseball series Ken Burns did. I used.
Oh yeah, right. And he did a great jazz series too.
Yeah. And then there were other documentaries that I used in that setting with middle school history, civics students. So that was after teaching for about a decade. I began to say, I want to try to do this because I like visual composition. I like the art of filmmaking and the visual artistry of framing and conveying, people and places and things, and with the storytelling, with exploring social issues or whatever. So I basically left teaching and began when video was becoming digital and it was more accessible to people who didn't go to film school. Mm-hmm. I kind of plunged into it then.
Okay, because I was going to ask you, since you've been doing documentaries for a while, if the change to digital really changed your way of filming. Yeah. But you came in.
Yeah.
During
I came into it. I some workshops and some of my first experiences with video were actually with A/B roll edit bays, like huge edit bays with multiple decks and tape, video tape. And it was at that time when Adobe Premiere editing software came out. I think that may have been the first one that came out before Final Cut. And that's what I learned. That's when I first learned about digital video, was with Adobe Premiere, one of the first first releases of Premiere. Mm-hmm. And that would be in the like mid-late 90s maybe, and I believe that's when it came out. And that, like I said, folks like me who were just wanting to get into it, the digital realm just made getting into it much more accessible, much easier than having really large cameras and multiple tape decks, and the expense of video production prior to the digital age was significant. So, wow. And it's obviously now it's different. People can make films on phones and with even less expensive hard drives. My first 18 gigabyte hard drive was about that big.
Whoa.
And now you get, what is it? I have this USB, is 32 gigabytes. So
that's small. Wow. I didn't even know they came that small.
Yeah. So, and the cards, I'm shooting with a camera now, the little SD card is that big, and it's 64 gigabytes.
Nice.
So
I have to ask you this, Kenny.
That always blows my mind, how 64 gigabytes on a little wafer thin SD card, you can get 110 hours of video on that little thing. It's just, I have a hard time wrapping my brain around that.
That's pretty amazing. I read that it might be scary to use a card with so much storage capacity and to maybe settle for 32 if you're worried about, I don't know if you've ever had a card to fail on you. I haven't.
I have not. I've had hard drives fail, but I do back up. So, but I've never actually. Well, I take that back. In Kenya, I had a card failure. I salvaged a little bit of the card, so that I did have one. That was with an S by S card, which was a bigger card, and that was my only experience in it, and it's not pleasant.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Gee, I have to ask you this, Kenny. Okay, you don't have to use yourself as the answer to this question, but when I watch documentaries, sometimes I'm watching like the documentary about the Chicago area basketball players, where he's following kids for years, and I'm thinking, how do these people get paid? Because the documentary is so intense. I can't imagine that a documentarian works on 5 or 10 movies at the same time. It just boggles my mind as to how they make money working on something for years at a time. And I don't know. Can you give me some idea? You don't have to use yourself. I'm not trying to get into your business.
Well, I think that with a lot of those really long-term projects, the filmmakers are not working 24/7 on that film. They are, the period of time, there may be times like in a year where they're only shooting for a couple of weeks, or it's on and off. So most filmmakers have other work or other sources of income beyond their film projects.
Okay.
Or they have raised a lot of money and have a lot of grant money to set aside time for really long projects. But rarely does a filmmaker, when you hear about a film that has taken, like my Alice project, I've gone a couple of months not shooting anything, not working on the film at all. I'm working on other projects.
Oh, okay.
So it's really common that when you talk about documentary filmmakers, many wear different hats and have different kinds of work beyond the film that is coming out, next week or whatever. So that's kind of how I see it. Other filmmakers might have other.
Okay. I was just wondering, because when you watch the documentary, you can see how much care went into it. And it just looks like they worked on it night and day and lived and breathed it, but.
Well, you do work on it night and day. There are, especially during the editing process, someone, the filmmaker or the editor is working on editing the film night and day, but they may work on it for 2 weeks solid and then take a break for a couple of weeks.
Okay.
That's not uncommon. Now, there may be filmmakers who just say, I'm plowing through this and I want to get it done. And so they do work only on their film for a good chunk of time. But, it varies from person to person, and it does depend on their, the finances of their lives, their work, and how their film life fits in with other things. And if they have funding for the film to plow in a lot of time and focus on the film, that's what they'll do. And that's why, in my current project, we have a crowdfunding campaign going on, and the focus of this campaign is to pay for me and my camera folks to shoot interviews. And we're not working every day, but we're raising money for a very specific task that we need to get done to move the film forward. And some of the funds also are going to help prepare for editing by transcribing interviews that we're shooting, because we need to put hours into transcribing the material we're capturing in the interview. So those are the ways that I tend to work, is kind of figure out we need to raise money for these tasks, and the next big fundraising work will be next year for editing and figuring out how are we going to pay someone to set aside time, like you say, to work pretty intensively to help pull the story together from the hours and hours of footage we have.
It's good that you can do crowdfunding. I can't imagine how people did films before crowdfunding was invented. I suppose it probably took them even longer because they had to raise the money some other way,
Right.
side jobs or whatever. So, so how can we help with crowdfunding? How can we find this project of yours?
Well, I think you're going to help by putting the URL, the links in your credits. But
I will.
The film title is You Gave Me a Song, Life and Music of Alice Gerrard. The website is alicegerrardfilm.com. So if you type in alicegerrardfilm.com, you'll come to our website. The website has on the homepage a trailer which will get you excited, and then there's a come on in, support the film button, which brings you into the website, and there's a we're calling it an old time crowdfunding campaign to play on the content of the film, which is old time music, bluegrass music. And the old time crowdfunding campaign page has a bunch of fun premiums, including the T-shirt over my left shoulder. Phil Blank, a local Durham artist, designed our shirt, and it is very comfortable. And for a donation of $200, you can have one.
Awesome.
And there are a bunch of other where we have all levels of contributions from $20 to $10,000. So your support at any level is welcome, and we're hoping to blast by our crowdfunding goal, since we know we need to raise more money. So the more funds we can raise now before the end of the month, the better position we'll be in to begin editing next year and doing whatever other work we need to do on the production side to wrap things up. So
awesome. So let's really encourage people to check out alicegerrardfilm.com. So
exactly, and also spread the word like you are good at on social media. I'm not a social media whiz. My executive producer friend Ashley Melzer is really good at it, and the more folks that who are interested in the film, the more folks that spread the word on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, the more we'll get the word out. And there are many people who don't know about Alice Gerrard that need to know about her and her music, and this really important part of American music that I didn't know about again before I started. But it's a rich, deep, rooted tradition, and there's so much to be celebrated in Alice's story. But even beyond that, it's a big, important story.
And to think that she's right here in our town and would have gone unnoticed by those of us who don't know about old time music.
Yeah. Yep.
I need to ask you another question just about documentaries in general, and then we'll only talk for a couple minutes more because I know you have. I think you said you have some social things going on this weekend.
Yeah.
So you're an independent documentary filmmaker. Mm-hmm. So is there such a thing? Because I wonder where documentaries come from. I mean, honestly, you're the first and only documentary filmmaker I've ever met. So is there such a thing as a filmmaker who is assigned a subject and that's where he makes his money? Like, for example, if a museum or somebody says, we'd like for you to make a documentary about this and that.
Yeah, and that's what I was talking about. So independent documentaries that are produced by filmmakers is one kind of work, but there are, I have been hired as an independent contractor or collaborated on projects that folks want. They may not be documentary films, they may be more videos that are promoting a particular project or a particular social issue. I love doing that kind of work. I have an interest in bringing my skills to advocacy for social justice and bettering our world. So I pursue and am approached by people about that kind of project. And then there are when filmmakers are well known, and this hasn't happened to me as much as other filmmakers, but they will be approached by a cable station or a museum, like you say, an organization to produce a film or documentary about a particular issue or topic, and that does happen too.
So
different kind of work. It may be a different kind of.
So who ends up owning the film? The person making the assignment, or the artist, or the filmmaker?
It would just depend on the agreement, but oftentimes if you're hired, it's the organization that has rights.
Okay.
If you're hired as an independent contractor, or there's a contract that spells out who owns rights to the content, then it may not be the filmmaker. It might be the Smithsonian or National Geographic or whoever the producer.
Okay. And in your case, is one of your goals to enter your films in film festivals?
Most of my films, I've tried to do that. I have mixed feelings about film festivals, and I think it's the world of distribution of films that are self-produced, like this film is. That's changing, but it's always something that I will look to do when the film's complete, is to kind of select festivals that I think will be a good home for the film, a good fit, and where the competition, and there's a lot of competition now to get into festivals, where you feel like the competition is in your favor a little bit given the content of the film. So this film will play better at a festival, on the music film festival, or festivals that have an interest in films about Southern music, Southern Appalachian music, old time bluegrass music. But I think I'm always thinking about beyond festival audiences, because in some ways the bigger audiences are not at festivals. There are a niche audience for this film that might be at music camps and other kind of settings, universities with music programs, or again programs in Southern history and culture. So
I'm just hoping that you make your money back, or make some money from this.
That rarely happens, but we'll see. You never know.
Well, I used Roku cable like years ago, and I used to watch TV. Documentary channel.
Okay.
So is that a goal of yours, to get your films onto the documentary channels on Roku and Apple TV and that sort of thing? Can you make money that way?
I'm open to doing that. I don't have any films on those channels right now, so
you need to check it out, because there's a lot of good stuff out there.
Yeah, I will do that. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you so much, Kenny. I know you're busy. I really appreciate that you could carve out about a half hour for us here on TV Skywriter. So you want to direct people to AliceGerardFilm.com.
Yeah.
And you can help with the endeavor to make this wonderful documentary. I can't wait to see it myself.
Yeah. And check out the trailer, and email me if you have questions about the film, or need more information. So
one more question. Alice Gerard, did she ever release any cassettes or records or anything like that?
She has a bunch of albums. So Alice has her own website. She's performed on many albums, and has self-distributed and self-produced her own albums. And
okay.
Since I've met her, I think 2 or 3 albums have been released. So definitely check out her albums. And one of her more recent albums was nominated for a Grammy Award.
Whoa!
And it's quite an impressive album, and so that's in my collection. Should be in your collection too.
It will be. Well, I know who the heck she is. I will definitely check her out. So thanks again, Kenny, for being on TV Skywriter.
Okay, thank you, Pat.
And folks, I hope you enjoyed this show. If you would ever like to be a guest, just write to me, DurhamSkywriter@gmail.com. And if you ever want to see what an all-positive community newspaper looks like, check out Skywriter.com, which emanates from Durham, North Carolina. With that, have a beautiful evening. I will see you later, and ciao for now.